Hello, friends. This is Jesse Juarez, president of the Rotary Club of sunny Seaside, California. You're watching a presentation which was recorded live at one of our club meetings. Seaside Rotary meets via Zoom twice a month. Our meetings feature dynamic presentations from many of the movers and shakers that make Monterey County such a vibrant and hardworking community. If you'd like to join a meeting or learn more about Rotary and the work that we do, you can reach out to Seaside Rotary Club at gmail.com. Again, that's Seaside Rotary Club at gmail.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel for more dynamic content. Once I do that, I'm going to give the floor to Mr. Steve McShane to introduce our esteemed guest.
Well, it's great to have a friend and a real advocate for local and regional agriculture as our speaker today. I'll do a quick intro here. Our speaker was actually just named the Agriculturalist of the Year by the Salinas Valley Chamber. He's a past chair of the Salinas Valley Chamber, very active in the Peninsula Chamber, the Salinas Valley Chamber, holding numerous roles locally amongst TAMC, the Monterey Peninsula Taxpayers Association, the Monterey County Convention and Visitors Bureau. I'm very excited to work with our speaker today as he is chair of the Community Advisory Committee for Central Coast Community Energy, formerly Monterey Bay Community Power. His background started as a young man in a family nursery operation where he probably did just about everything. Worked in the family's operation, graduated USC in business, accounting, and finance, and played a leadership role in the Farm Bureau, in his local Farm Bureau, and went on to be a state director. That's actually where we met. And not just as an advocate for nursery products, but for California agriculture, which is just so complex as it relates to water and land use and labor and so many other issues. We're so lucky in Monterey County to have our speaker's leadership as executive director. In fact, our local Farm Bureau has received several years in a row the highest honor for the county operation, and that's largely due to our speaker's leadership. So today's speaker is going to focus on, what is Farm Bureau, what are some of the challenges that Farm Bureau is facing, and what are some of the solutions that Farm Bureau is a part of to keep agriculture sustainable and quite frankly profitable here along the Central Coast. So please help me in welcoming the Executive Director of the Monterey County Farm Bureau, Norm Groot.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that great introduction. Thanks, Steve. You're a great friend. And I'm not even going to say how many years we go back together here. It's embarrassing. Jesse, you're going to have to let me share my screen. I don't have that authority right now.
Yes, sir. In fact, in order to do that, unfortunately, because I'm working on my phone, I'll have to go ahead and make you the host. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now.
Okay. All right. While he's doing that, a little bit of background on me. I've been in this position here at Monterey County Farm Bureau for a little over 10 years now. My native lands are in Orange County, where I was born and raised, and grew up in my family's nursery business there in the local Irvine area. And then as the Irvine Company slowly paved over most of South Orange County, we were forced out eventually. And my background is still in horticulture. I worked for Monrovia Growers for 17 years, which is the large national operation. You'll see a lot of their green nursery containers in local garden centers. Let me see if this is working. Oh, yes, it is. There we go. All right. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and there we go. All right, so I'm going to buzz through screens, and I'm not going to necessarily walk and talk through them all, but I'll show this as kind of a way to bounce through this so that I stay organized in my thoughts, but you can also see some pretty pictures of what we do here locally. A little bit of history about Farm Bureau. let me adjust my screen here just a little. There we go. We are over 100 years old in the Salinas Valley here. We are the original voice of agriculture, so to speak, here in Monterey County. We are established alongside the UC Cooperative Extension System and the farm advisors that work cooperatively with our local farmers and ranchers. We are part of a larger organization called California Farm Bureau, and then indeed a national presence at the American Farm Bureau. So we're really a three-tiered organization with most of our policy coming from the county farm bureaus and working its way up through the organization. So we are definitely grassroots. Currently, we represent about 350 family farms and ranches throughout Monterey County. And then we have some supporters, about 200 people who just simply like to eat and support farming. So you're probably familiar with the geography of the Salinas Valley, and really it's one of 6 areas in the world where it's really perfect conditions for growing the types of crops that we have here. We have about 220,000 acres that are currently irrigated, and that is primarily from groundwater, and I'll talk a little bit about that later in the presentation. But our climate is really suitable for the types of crops that we have here and how we produce in a very intensive situation for those leafy greens, berries, vegetables, and grapes that we produce here on an annual basis. And that brings us to the total, which is $4.4 billion of farm gate value. That is the gross value. That is not the net profit that farmers make, unfortunately. That is the gross value of what we grow and sell every year. And that has continued to increase steadily throughout the years, primarily due to efficiencies in our operation, but also increases in yields. We do a study every 5 years on the direct, indirect, and induced economic contributions, and that came to 11.7 billion with a B. So that's a very large number of how farming impacts local economies here in Monterey County. 150 different crops, 72,000 local jobs, and we have a wide variety of different crops that allow us to have economic stability. If one crop has a poor production year, other crops obviously can make up the difference there. So just as it stacks in our economic elements, agriculture is our #1 industrial sector in Monterey County, or economic sector. Tourism follows, and then unfortunately government is third, and real estate may actually eclipse government this year because they've had a lot of good real estate sales this year for some reason. As I said, we have a lot of direct jobs, 57,000 people working directly in the fields, either in growing, production, maintenance, and or harvesting, primarily in harvesting. 3,000 jobs in the value-added food processing facilities where they stick the lettuce in the bag, so to speak. And then an additional 15,000 jobs in ancillary services and companies that supply agriculture, such as the box companies, the container companies, insurance, lawyers, accountants, those types of informational systems that support agriculture. Last time I checked, we generated about 110 million in local tax revenues, and that includes property taxes. And then we grew on average 7.3% during the years of the recession, and that was pretty significant, knowing that everyone still needs to eat and we need to continue production. Just to give you an idea of how the salad bowl of the world really fits into our country's dinner tables every night, we produce about 59% of the leafy greens, 53% of the broccoli, and 30% of the strawberries that end up in people's refrigerators or homes across our country every year. We are the largest organic fresh produce farming area in the nation right now, and our winery corridor was named one of the top 10 destinations in the world. So here you can see the leading crops that we have here. Most of these are vegetables and leafy greens. We do have significant wine grape production, and we also have significant Cattle, free range cattle, that is also in the top 10 of the different crops that we have here. So we have a wide variety of different things that we do. We're very diversified here. And our ranking in California is the 4th highest producing county in California. We are, as I said, the salad bowl of the world, but our production here is larger than 20 other states across the country. So if you think of our small little area here in Monterey County, we exceed 20 other states in the United States here. You can see the 9 commodities that we lead in the state's production. And then actually 55% of our strawberries grown in California come from Salinas and Pajaro areas. And that equates to the high value and intensive agriculture that we have here. As we go along, you can see on the left there that the nationwide average production per acre is 500 compared to Monterey County, which is 43,000. That's a huge difference. We are very high value crops here, simply because we can turn them over quickly, and they are crops that really are suitable for our unique area as far as climate, soil, and water that all come together. And it's important to note in that bottom corner there on the right, Monterey County agriculture is 10% of California's agricultural total production on just 2% of the land in California. So that's very significant high value crops. We have a 10-month production cycle generally, sometimes 11 if the weather cooperates. Again, intensive crop rotations where it's usually a 4-year cycle where we start with berries for 2 years, transition into a lettuce crops for a cycle of a year, and then follow it up with a vegetable crop, either broccoli or cauliflower or another vegetable. And that really helps with soil health and the control of pests and diseases in those soils. We definitely have unique weather conditions for the crops that we grow here. As you know, berries are grown mostly in the coastal zone area where we get that nice influence of the coastal climate on a daily afternoon basis. Wine grapes like the warmer area in the south part of the county. And then we have cool season vegetables that are grown throughout the county so that we can continue with that rotational value every 4 years. I'm going to talk about technologies a little bit later, so I'll skip through that right now. Just want to give you an idea of what it takes to grow a crop here. And strawberries are our most expensive crop to produce, simply because it requires a huge investment up front to get that plant in the ground, so to speak. And that number was generated by a survey at UC Davis, $37,000 investment per acre just to get the plants in the ground. That's not even beginning to harvest a berry, and that usually takes several months before you realize that. So it is a significant investment when you think of all the strawberry acres that we have here, about 10 to 11,000 per year on average. That's a significant number to keep berries in the ground. So let's talk a little bit about groundwater, and that seems to be one of the biggest issues that agriculture is facing, not only here, but generally around California in general. And it was highlighted by the 4 years of drought that we had earlier in this decade. And our reservoirs store our water supply here. We have 2 reservoirs at the south end of the county that were built in the 1950s and 60s that really helped to improve our water resource supply system here in the Salinas Valley. But our reservoirs are currently at low levels. As of this week, Nacimiento is at 21% of capacity and San Antonio only at 16%. However, after last night, they may significantly change. We'll see, especially with a lot of that rainfall happening in the Big Sur area last night and throughout today. We may see a lot of that watershed fill those reservoirs rather quickly and dramatically. We are under strict guidance from a number of different agencies for releases of water from those reservoirs, for fish passages, for native vegetation habitat, and for other situations, including the Salinas River Water Project, which is used to help put water into a system of reclaimed water so that we can avoid some groundwater pumping in the coastal zone area where we have seawater intrusion. The main point of our modified system here with our 2 reservoirs is to recharge our groundwater during the irrigation season and release water from those 2 reservoirs during that season. So as we're extracting for our irrigation, we are actually putting it back in as fast as we can. And our soils allow us to do that because they're fairly porous. We have a number of issues that face us in water right now: quantity, quality, sustainability, costs of keeping projects moving forward and the repair and maintenance of those projects, water rights, and then desalination, as you're all probably aware, is a big hot topic right now. And regulatory compliance related to water is fairly expensive for the farmers right now, with all the compliance reporting and monitoring and data keeping that they have to do for those various different agencies that monitor water at this point. It gets pretty expensive, and we've seen regulatory costs in the last decade increase 795%. And that's a pretty significant cost when you see that the cost of production only have increased roughly 25% in that same time frame. So a little bit about our technology and what we're doing here. We do have an innovation center in Salinas that's been highly successful in bringing new innovative products and services to local farmers who are known for early adoption. And one of those areas of biggest concern is, of course, water efficiency. And here you can see in the last 2 decades, we are now using 17% less water than we were doing 20 years ago. And our crop yields are up by 55%. And that is due to water efficiency programs, as well as the adoption of new technologies, running irrigation systems from a tablet rather than having someone go out in the field and turn on a valve and forget about it for a few hours. So there's a lot of different things that have been adopted by growers here, including drip irrigation or micro irrigation on 70% of our crops grown, which is a very significant number. All our strawberries and grapes currently are grown on drip irrigation exclusively. And we're looking at new and different ways to manage water as we go along too. We're not by no means resting on our laurels, so to speak. And then we're looking at too, how we can handle harvesting in a more efficient manner. Right now, most of our crops need hand labor to harvest those crops. There is no mechanized harvesting for lettuce, strawberries, or vegetables such as broccoli and artichokes. And so we need to figure out, if we're going to continue using hand labor, first of all, how do we get that labor supply here so that we can ensure that we can harvest what we grow? But second, is it really a good paradigm to continue using labor for these types of harvesting operations? And so there's a lot of research going on how we can modernize our harvesting situation. But if you think about a strawberry, which grows under the leaves of the plant close to the ground and has to be the right red color, has to be the right size, and has to actually be visible or spotted by the person harvesting it, how do you get a machine to do all those split-second decisions that a hand-eye coordination of a laborer can do? So those are the challenges that we're really facing in harvesting. And we've supported a number of ag tech summits here from Forbes and others through 2018 and 19. 2020s was canceled due to the pandemic. We're hoping that Forbes comes back because it attracts a lot of innovation from around the world. Now I'll go into a few of our market challenges at this point and trying to compete in a global marketplace. We do export a lot of our product to other areas around the world, including Mexico and Canada, which are our prime international travel partners at this point, or export partners, excuse me. But in the future, we're going to have to figure out what will we grow and who will grow it. Do we have enough water resource development in place, and how will we pay for future projects to maintain our groundwater stability? Remember, we are dependent on groundwater exclusively for our irrigations here, with very few exceptions. And seawater intrusion is not a resolved issue at this point. We need to figure out how we're going to deal with that, and that could be quite costly as a water resource project. And then we're also looking at land conversion issues, and does our general plan support keeping prime agricultural lands in production when there's so much competition. Not only do we have to build more housing for those who live here and figure out that side of the equation, but we're also getting a lot of pressures from alternative energy generation such as solar and wind. And how does that compete with prime ag space in the fit land conversion issue fit, so to speak? So we'll be watching the county's general plan as it's redeveloped for 2030 and how family farming will fit into that. And will family farms really be able to continue not only financially, but in the process that they're currently growing of crops. And these are just a few of the market influences that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Food safety has become a huge issue and actually a very positive story for local agriculture. We took the initiative to develop the Leafy Greens Marketing Agreement, which all handlers of leafy greens and many vegetable products now have to comply with in order to get their products into most of the marketplaces such as Safeway, Whole Foods, some of the larger big box stores like Costco, Target. You have to be part of the LGMA in order to do that. And food safety measures are becoming very dynamic and moving forward as the science advances in a very rapid and technical manner. We're also looking at a lot of offshore increased competition. We're getting a lot of imports from South America at this point. It's interesting that you can go to the supermarket and buy a peach year round now. When I was a kid, we had to wait for peach season every year before we could make those pies. And now you can walk into any supermarket generally and find a peach 24/7. So that's also adding to a number of dynamics that we have as far as a global marketplace. And then, you know, many people make a lot of light of the conventional versus organic production methods. And there's a place in the market for both. I think it's pretty clear from a lot of the studies that we see now that organic production cannot keep pace with the amount of food that we have to produce, not only here, but globally for the entire population of the world. And as that expands, organic just will not be able to keep up with that pace. So we have some element of conventional that needs to be implemented there. And there's a place in the market for both. We are fortunate here, though, that we don't have to deal with genetically modified. There are no genetically modified crops grown in Monterey County at this time, and there doesn't appear to be on the horizon in the near future. So what we grow here is natural and in many cases organic, as we are that largest production area in the country currently. But a lot of our production is conventional, and a lot of our farmers do both because it is a market opportunity for both of them. So we really produce what we eat on our dinner tables. Our healthy diets start here, and we're very fortunate that we have such a great production area nearby here that allows us to have good local nutritious choices on a daily and weekly basis. So with that, I will end my presentation and entertain any questions. Here's my contact information. If you want to email me, that's the best way to reach me at this point with questions or comments. And then our website listed there is a great resource information, not only for what's going on locally here, but some of the issues that farmers are facing in general, regionally and across the country. And great information on what's happening here locally in our agricultural community too. So I invite you to take a look at that. And if you support farming and eating, you're welcome to join Farm Bureau as a associate member, so to speak, and that entitles you to not only what we're doing here on a regular basis, but also some great discounts at local and national programs that we have, including a really good discount on Ford trucks if you're looking for a pickup. So I will leave it at that and see if there are any questions.
Fantastic. Norm, first off, I just want to say thank you so much for all that information. I mean, we haven't earned the title of Salad Bowl of the World for nothing. And it's clear that there's definitely a lot of hard work, a lot of research, a lot of science and manpower that goes into producing the food that we produce. So just want to say kudos for all the work that you do and for the information you've given us today. Now, going to the chat box window, it appears our first question, let's see. What is the position of Monterey County agriculture when it comes to solutions to Monterey Peninsula's lack of water?
So, okay, so I understand that to mean, did we support the desalination facility? And the answer to that is yes. When California American first proposed that back in 2012, we were really concerned about the impacts on the groundwater basin of the Salinas Valley with their proposed intakes near the CMEX site. We did some independent studies with hydrologists who are familiar with the Salinas Valley aquifer and determined that actually that project could improve seawater intrusion in that North Marina area. And so we ended up supporting the project at the CPUC. We were part of that whole 8-year process to gain approval for the project. So we support a long-term solution for the Monterey Peninsula and their water supply system, which we feel in the long term is really a desalination facility. And I'll preface that by saying that I'm a resident of Pacific Grove, so I feel the pain on a daily basis with my water bills. But the point being is that, you know, we need to figure this out. The peninsula's had 25 years to work through the cease and desist order and has basically produced nothing at this point. And relying on reclaimed water is great in the short term, but it does not solve the long-term problem simply because there's a diminishing return factor on source water for those desalinate or the reclamation systems. So we need to look at this more in a global perspective. And yes, desal is expensive and it's energy intensive, but the technologies have improved so much over the last decade or more that we're really looking at a pretty state-of-the-art solution that could really take us 30, 40, or 50 years in the future. So anyway, that's what our position is on solving the Monterey Peninsula's water supply problem.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate all the research and the hard work going into trying to find a long-term solution there. Let's see, our next question in the chat box window. Housing in Monterey County is a huge issue. What is agriculture doing to house both domestic and guest workers? Is there support?
Yes, there is. And actually, there's a lot of housing that's actually been built and being built for farm worker housing and workforce housing here in the Salinas Valley. We have Spreckles Crossing and we have Veranda Crossing that can house up to 2,000 farm workers. There's a new project on the west side of Salinas that will be coming online this spring that can also house, I believe, up to 1,000 also. So we are building a lot of beds in the Salinas Valley. There have been a number of projects in the South County, King City area also. And so we have really taken this to heart in the ag community to house our farm workers, not only our temporary farm workers, but those who are eligible to live in these types of facilities and make sure that they have a decent place to live and are not overcrowded in either East Salinas or other cities up and down the Salinas Valley. So we are proactively doing it. I think it's a challenge based on how hard it is to get through the permitting process, not only with the county, but with some of the municipalities. We're working on that with the county, trying to streamline some of those permitting processes, but we're not having much success with mitigation fees and some of the other expenses that go along with the permitting process. And so if you build a big project similar to Spreckles Crossing or Veranda Crossing or what's going up in west side of Salinas, you're going to have some significant permitting fees, including the mitigation. So that in itself kind of discourages farm worker housing on a smaller scale. You really have to have the larger scale in order to make that work.
Gotcha, gotcha. In fact, regarding Veranda Crossing, I've passed by that location fairly often between the Seaside and the Salinas clubhouses. So good to see that that project is coming through there. Let's see, our next question here. Can you speak to your role on the Central Coast Community Energy CAC board? How engaged is agriculture in alternative energy? Do you see more investment there?
Sure. So I got involved in this from the beginning when we started proposing Monterey Bay Community Power, and actually, Steve, thank you for roping me into this. But I think with Steve's energy and the way he was really gung-ho on us having our own control over our power and where it comes from, how it's generated, we really feel that here in the Salinas Valley, as well as the agricultural community. Um, I think there's a lot of momentum, so to speak, to not only find grid resiliency, but also make sure that the energy that we're using is as green as we possibly can make it. And so my role as chair of the Community Advisory Council is to take input from the agricultural community and others, because there's other council members who walk in different economic sectors than I do, and put that all together and help make policy recommendations to the operations board and the policy boards at 3CE, so that we can really move forward with a concerted effort. And now that we have expanded areas in San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara County, we have an opportunity, I think, on a grander scale to make a bigger difference on the Central Coast. It comes with its challenges of being a much larger region and requiring more staff time, so to speak. But overall, I think being in control of our energy and how it's generated is going to be very important in the future, particularly as we look towards grid resiliency and how we handle the PSPS situations that PG&E is working through. Can we mitigate those by having our own local generation? Can we mitigate those with local grids, those types of things? So I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and I think you'll see in the agricultural community that we're really moving towards a lot of electrification. I hear a lot of excitement about the electric pickups that are coming, and we're working through a number of programs that help electrify pumps and other equipment on the farm. I don't think we're quite there with tractors and a few other of the heavier equipments that we need, and we really need to look at long haul trucking eventually, because that's a big part of our transportation system. But overall, you know, it's important, I think, to be part of the community on this, and we really can lead the way and help other parts of the state of California realize what agriculture can contribute to green energy.
Excellent. Well, really glad to hear that. Let's see, our next question in the chat box window. And by the way, I just want to tell everyone in the group, my apologies in case we can't get through all of the questions. We will try to cut off the question and answer time around 12:55 or so, just to respect the time there. But our next question here, could you share a bit more about the Technology Innovation Center in Salinas? Does it have a partnership both locally and with technology companies? What are some of their current projects?
Sure. It was established, I believe, 3 years ago now. It's a cooperative program between Western Growers and Taylor Farms. It is housed in the Taylor Farms building in downtown Salinas. And to my knowledge, at the last count, they probably have just over 50 different companies working in that innovation center right now, and have put through maybe close to 100 at this point through those 3 years of process. We have several local success stories, including Heavy Connect, that really have used that to their advantage and really propelled them to larger platforms throughout agriculture, not just locally here. So I have to say, not everything in that innovation center is going to apply to what we do here. We're kind of a unique brand of agriculture compared to the rest of California, where if you drive up and down the Central Valley, you see a lot of fruit and nut trees and cotton and other things that we just don't grow here. And so a lot of that innovation center is dedicated to more mainstream crops, so to speak, and not necessarily to the quick turn vegetables and leafy greens that we have here in Monterey County. But we're taking as much advantage of it as we can. We have a cooperative group of growers that work with those innovators, so to speak, and make those connections, so that if there are proof of concepts or trials that are needed in the fields, that we have a set of farmers ready to take those on and work with those innovators. So that was the main key, I think, is that we have the opportunity here to really make that connection with farmers. And that is the interest that a lot of these innovators see coming to Salinas and being part of that. And then Forbes really helped put us on the map with their annual conference here in the summer in Salinas that really brought in people from around the world with their various different ideas. And some of them are pretty outlandish, I have to say. I've been through a couple of presentations that I would think, like putting huge bags of water storage facilities out in the Monterey Bay to store water and desalinate it using sunlight. Well, that's not going to happen in a marine sanctuary. So you have to kind of be careful about what you pick and choose and make sure that it fits not only with what we're doing here in agriculture, but also with our environment in general.
Excellent. It's really very promising to hear that Forbes and these various tech companies are seeing Salinas as a literal ground zero in terms of being able to take these ideas, that people come up with in these labs on the drawing board and really apply it to the hands and feet of people on the ground and how the ag business is run, essentially. So it's very cool to hear. Let's see our next question here. How about a quick word about the young farmers and ranchers? How do they work? How do you join? Age? Do you need to be a Farm Bureau member?
Well, Steve is the one who should answer this question. Steve actually started our current chapter of Young Farmers and Ranchers, which encompasses not only Monterey, but San Benito County. And we have a good core group of leaders right now who are working through the pandemic. A lot of young farmer and rancher connections are made through getting together in person. And so it's been really tough to do this electronically for the last year. And I believe that they're holding it together. But anyway, Young Farmers and Ranchers is a group of individuals who are under the age of 35, starting their careers locally here in agriculture or interested in agriculture, and want to make connections and network with others doing the same, but also make connections with local companies in case they want to advance their careers. And so we offer educational opportunities where we tour different facilities, and then we also offer meetings in our office here in Salinas where we have an educational topic or an issue that we cover, and then we have a general discussion about public policy about it. Or in this last year, the most popular event that we had was wine tasting, having a few of the younger vintners in Monterey County come in and present their varietal wines and why they're doing what they're doing in a unique boutique type fashion. And so that became very popular to do every year too. So it just depends, but it's a great way to get people who are just starting their careers in agriculture or interested in what we do locally in agriculture. You do not need to be a Farm Bureau member. And that's why I think Young Farmers and Ranchers work so well, is that it's not a membership-based community. It's really those who are sincerely interested in making connections with each other.
Well, sounds like a fantastic networking opportunity. And then it looks like it's 12:51 right now. It looks like we just have time for one more question here before we
Sure.
we end the presentation. Does the farm growers support or oppose the attempted government takeover of the CalAm water system proposed by the MPWMD?
The answer to that is no. We have stood a number of times and published a number of opinion pieces in local media that we do not believe that that is a good idea at this point. We do not see how there could be cost savings by making that water system a public system. And we could be proven wrong, and we'll wait and see how that comes out in the operational report that's due yet. But the point being is that anytime you take anything into the government, it ends up being more costly. And we really don't understand how a public takeover of a private water system is really going to produce more efficiencies, especially when they have to establish call centers and hire a whole bunch of people to maintain the system and figure out exactly how they're going to deliver that water for the claimed reduction in price that they have put forward So the answer to the question at this point is no, we do not support the public takeover of California American Water.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for that answer. And yeah, again, very, very complicated issues there, but appreciate all the hard work the organization is doing to find, the best long-term solutions there. Perfect. Well, we're going to go ahead and end the question and answer session to respect the time there. Norm, thank you. Thank you so much for being with us today and for giving us all this information. And, it's really enlightening just to hear all the background work and research and just hard work that goes into making this, like I said, the salad bowl of the world. So thank you once again.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm glad to do it. Thank you.
All righty, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording function now.